today's Energy Central webcast entitled Utility Network Implementation at MDU Utilities Group, Challenges and Lessons Learned 4 years in. Before we begin, I would love to introduce our two panelists today. We have with us Jessica Upham, who is the Manager of GIS for Montana-Dakota Utilities Group. She oversees both gas and electric GIS operations across 4 utility brands in 8 states. She has nearly 20 years of GIS experience in the utility industry, implementing new technologies with a focus on project management. Also happy is Joaquin Madrid. He's a principal solutions engineer at SSP Innovations with over 30 years experience in enterprise systems for utilities. Since the alpha release of the utility network, Dr. Madrid has specialized in data modeling, strategies, and efficient migrations to the UN. Now I'd like to turn the floor over to Joaquin to kick things off. Joaquin, welcome to the event. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for attending. To start with, Jessica, how about you tell us more about Montana-Dakota Utilities Group?
Yes, so Montana-Dakota Utilities Group, we are a gas and electric utility. We are a combination of 4 utilities across 8 states. We have just over 1 million gas customers and about 150,000 electric customers.
All right. What about the role of the GIS group within the enterprise organization?
So within our 4 different companies across our utility group, we centralized all the different departments about, I think, in 2019. And so at that time, we had 3 different branded GIS teams that came together as one, and we broke it out into an editor and an analyst team. So we have those 2 teams. We also left a small GIS team in our IT group that kind of supports more on the technical side of things. But mostly as a whole, all of our different departments have been centralized across the utility brands, and we don't. So we operate as just one brand now.
Thank you. So for the last, about 5 years ago, you started thinking about adopting new technologies. And what were the business motivations and goals for this GIS unification?
Yeah, one of our biggest goals for this project was just to consolidate a lot of our business processes. We did things differently at all the brands. We were doing things, duplicating things, having multiple processes doing the same thing. And including in our GIS, we had multiple fields, that were doing the same thing, but one brand used this field and another brand used a different one. So a big goal of this project was really just to bring it all together and do things as best we can to operate just as one. And then, not just, our workflows and stuff like that, but our data models and just everything. We wanted to standardize our as-built thing, everything that we do so we can operate a little bit more efficiently. And then also just to help with our integrations, integrating to multiple databases was always a challenge, especially when they're different. But so consolidating that would hopefully simplify some of the technical side of things too.
So it gave you an opportunity to reevaluate the role that GIS plays within the organization. And in order to do that, you decided to adopt and transition to the utility network back then. How did you go about to implement that transition itself?
Yeah, so back in 2019, when we were kind of moving towards that unification across the utility group, we actually engaged with SSP to help us unify our gas database. And so we did that throughout the year in 2019. And SSP introduced us to the 4D approach that we used on our utility network project, which, as you can see, there's discovery, design, develop, and deploy. So, after our database unification in 2019, we moved right into our UNAT project with SSP in 2020, and then kind of took a little break in 2021 before we really jumped back into our UN migration project in 2022. And we just wrapped up this year.
Awesome. So part of it in the discovery was an analysis of your current states and workflows and planning future states, so a full migration and a full transition to the new technology. Can you tell us what the states were and what you were looking forward to obtaining?
Yeah, so the discovery phase of the project was really just kind of, I mean, we focused a lot on current state, which is kind of an interesting to focus on for your project when your goal is to, get to the future state. But it really helped us a lot working with SSP on the database unification project in 2019 and the UNet project in 2020. But, having a project team, even just at MDU, from across all the different brands that previously did things differently, it was really helpful for even our team to go through our current state processes and really understand the way we did do things differently across the brands. So, I think a lot of that current state and kind of the discovery was intended to help SSP plan for our future state, but I think MDU, our project team, really got a lot of benefit out of it as well. So actually, when we started the project, we were on, I think it was 10.6.1 at the time, but we had to do an unplanned upgrade to 10.8.1 in 2023. That Log4j security vulnerability forced us to do that, shove that in the middle of our UN migration project. But so we were heavy ArcFM shop, so people were pretty ingrained in those ArcFM workflows with, tons of auto updaters, especially on the electric side, stored displays and templates and favorites and things like that. And again, our electric users are very pretty adamant that feeder manager is king, and we can't live without it. But
so the enterprise implementation with the utility network allows you to move into a server-side, using server-side out-of-the-box applications. You may be able to transition many of the auto updater functionality into attribute rules. You still have all the mapping capabilities, not only from Pro, but also from web maps. And in the electric, like you mentioned, Esri with the utility network offers phase propagation, which allows you to have more control of the networks. And in either case, you're going to be exercising a lot of trace configuration and sub-network exports because of your integrations. So in this transition, you were looking for optimizing the transition by maximizing out-of-the-box functionality and minimizing the OCM, organizational change management impact. Let's see how you did that. The optimizing the transition was with common patterns and workflows. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, so after the discovery phase, we jumped right into design. We worked on data modeling. We kind of went back and forth with gas and electric. We started with gas, and we took an approach for data modeling on gas that we were going to stay as out of the box UPDM data model as possible. And so we were, lots of workshops working on those. Once we got to the electric side of things, we kind of had to transition there. The data model on the Esri site at the time for electric wasn't exactly what we were looking for. So we took a little bit of a different approach on the data modeling from gas to electric. But yeah, we really just dug in on the design and worked on our future state workflows. We built out our infrastructure and all of our server as far as maintenance workflows. And those are still improving, I guess, but
yeah, I think that what I remember you telling me in the past is that it wasn't just a business integration, but also by looking for common patterns and workflows, you were integrating all the companies into a single way of doing things, which facilitated and optimized this movement to the new technology. One thing that is important to explain, I think, in this presentation is that even though the utility network allows you, and sometimes is advertised as integrating into a single instance different commodities like gas and electric, it was very clear since the beginning that for your organization, we wanted to maintain the instances separated, although the workflows and the patterns were going to be maintained as unified within the company. So let me look into maximizing the out of the box functionality. We know that for gas you adopted UPDM because it's a standard. So with that, what functionality do you get out of the box?
What functionality do we get out of the box?
The whole shebang, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of the connectivity rules and that come with the utility network. There's lots of built-in attribute rules, though we did add some additional ones, editor tracking, things like that. And then all of the subnetworks. We implemented all 4 subnetworks when we went live in September. Yeah, we really tried to stay with the standard UPDM and on the gas side.
Right, and we discussed that electric didn't have a standard, and you still wanted to unify transmission and distribution. You also wanted out of the box phase propagation, the whole subnetwork management, whether it's gas or electric, but subnetwork management, very important for your organization, the export of the subnetworks for integration, and also decoupling the team from using C# or .NET technology to write some functionality that can now be built around arcade attribute rules. So that's the out-of-the-box functionality. How then we try to minimize the impact on your organization? Because in the beginning, Esri Electric Foundation 4 years ago was a reference offered by Esri, but you chose not to adopt it. Why is that?
So yeah, it was a very complex model, and you know, like you said, one of our goals was for the project was to minimize the OCM impact on our business. And being an ArcFM shop before, we already had a pretty solid model that we were happy with, I guess.
Yeah, and the Electric Foundation actually comes with a lot of predefined elements, whether it's the organization of asset group and asset types. You also adopt fields and domains. And even though you can trim them out of the model with tools that Esri provides, but you, as you mentioned, it seemed to be coming with a level of complexity at the time that your team was not ready or chose really not to adopt. So why did you then use the SSP EDM model?
Yeah, so like you said, we were much more interested in keeping our electric side kind of like for like. So we kept our data model pretty much the same. Obviously, we have some new fields and whatnot for specific to utility network, but keeping the model that we had, we're able to just be more familiar with it. We use the geocoincident connectivity. So we're not doing the associative connectivity, where things are not networkally connected or geometrically connected, spatially connected. So we use the bank in the units model, basically just keeping it the same as what we had coming from ArcFM. So it's familiar for all of our folks, all of our editors. It's familiar for the business, familiar for the folks in the field, who are responding to emergencies and things like that.
Right, so you were facilitating the adoption of the new technology to your editors and map users, like you said, by introducing, instead of the fully associative model, a banks unit model that is familiar to everybody. It's also easy to edit with it, because what you are doing by having a geo-coincident model is that you simply search for your equipment, you select it, drag it, snap and drop it. You don't need to worry about all those gaps and associations, connectivity associations, and the existing workflows that you already have based on your fields with their names, with their types, with their domains. You didn't need to adapt any of those just because you were changing the core technology. That's very interesting approach there. How do you get proof of concept and then a way to verify step by step that the objectives of the projects during the design were being implemented during development?
So throughout the project, we had planned basically 4 different migrations ahead of the final. So we had 2 pilot runs, and these were really invaluable to us. We had, before we started our project team did some Esri trainings. We had the Naperville data. So we kind of had a UN sandbox environment, but until we really got to that pilot 1, we can see our own data in the sandbox. It's just really kind of hard to picture how things are going to go and really understand what you're trying to do until you can see your own data. So that was just really valuable to have that. I think pilot 1, we migrated like 5% of our data. We found areas across the entire survey, since data is a little different in some spots, but and then pilot 2, we did 20% of our data. So that just kind of opened up some more, helped us understand better how our subnetworks were going to function once we had our whole system in there. But it really just helped us to have those pilots early on in the project. Pretty much right after we had our data model, we jumped right into pilots, or pilot 1. So we're probably not even a year in, or close to a year into the project when we started with that first pilot. But I think that's when people really started kind of getting excited about the utility network. And once you can finally see your own data in that environment, it means a lot more to you than some Esri data that is perfect in the utility network.
Sorry, Jessica, did the pilots also help you figure out if your data was ready for this transition with any assessment?
Yes. We did use a data assessment.
What is it that we found? I don't remember now.
Yeah, each iteration that we did, so after pilot 1 and pilot 2, each time we continued to find more data errors, and the SSP team was very kind to us. They told us that our data was some of the best they've seen so far, but not sure that that's true. They're just trying to make us feel good. We had an extensive data cleanup project throughout the entire 3 years of our project. We had a lot leading into it. I think on the gas side of things, we had to generate nearly 1 million fittings. We didn't map all of our fittings in our out west. So yeah, lots of data cleanup, and still working through data cleanup for that to make our subnetworks function on the gas side. But
so the pilots seem to have had a lot of value for early exposure, but then what did you use the mocks for?
Yeah, so after the pilot 1 and pilot 2, we jumped right into the mocks. The intent, I think mock 1 was supposed to be 50% of our data. SSP made the decision to actually migrate all of our data for us. So really helped us give us the full picture of what we were going to have upon go live. But at that, and then we're also able to just dive deeper into more of the UN functionality with the branch versioning. We have, our users started creating feature templates, which is awesome that they can just jump right in there and do that themselves to help them map. And then testing our attribute rules has been huge. We had transition all of our auto updaters to attribute rules, and so with that, it's learning a whole new scripting language, and we found things that didn't function the way we thought they would, and we just each mock we would find more and more, and we'd fix it to prepare us for the next one, which is actually why we ended up having a mock 2.5 is what we called it. But we needed one more migration before the final migration for go live, just to make sure we had everything correct.
Yeah, that was a final migration, right? Final.
Yeah. Always gotta have a final, right?
One thing I remember that the mocks were also very useful is because we could demonstrate with you, and you could see and give us feedback on the editing workflows that your users were accustomed to, and then we could tweak some of even the ordering of the attribute rules, or what attribute rules does what, based on that kind of workflow familiar to your users. I enjoy that. So we are talking about familiar look and feel, and I'm just going to give an example in case people are wondering. Is on the left-hand side, I'm showing the ArcFM store display that most of your electric users have been accustomed to for all these years. And on the right is the ArcGIS Pro map of exactly the same area. What do you say when you see this?
Say it looks like you're sharing the same picture. I think, like you said, our goal is to, or one of our goals anyways, to minimize the OCM impact. And I think having, this familiar look and feel really helps us achieve that goal.
Yes. So then at the end, the deploy stage, which is we have everything ready. And actually during the deploy stage is also when we were working on that mock 2.5. So there is a little overlap there. This is one thing that I enjoy working in your project is that you have been very organized since the beginning on an agile approach. Could you tell us a little more about this whole deploy, the agile testing, and everything else that we did?
Yeah, so we, I think we had 12 people on our project team. Our GIS team is, we really only have about 20 of us on the GIS team. So there's a lot of us on the project team already. But, we wanted to get all of our users involved early in the testing, ahead of go live. It's a huge change for everybody, especially our editors, but our analysts as well. So we involved a large portion of the team from the beginning, going through the testing, and we used JIRA to track anything that we found, and kind of communicate with SSP through JIRA as far as what needs to be updated, or things that weren't quite right or didn't work right, workflows that weren't right, things like that. And then we ended up doing things a little out of order as far as how we had planned it from the beginning of the project. We had UAT planned ahead of our train the trainer and user training, but we made the decision that we were going to bring in our entire GIS team into the UAT, which is user acceptance testing. So we thought it was important that we include the entire team. So we actually did things a little bit out of order. We did train the trainer first, and so SSP worked with us to train some of our core team members, and then we turned around and trained the rest of our team, I think within like a week or two after train the trainer. And then we did UAT, so we were able to involve the whole team, who we had actually been doing weekly trainings with the team. Everybody did Esri training, but we had been doing weekly trainings, I think since the beginning of 23, and maybe 24, but Yeah, so that was kind of the approach we took, a little bit different as far as, the way we planned it at the beginning, but I think it really helped us with our go live and deployment, just that the whole team had been involved. They were able to provide feedback, and, we were hoping that it would cause less issues or complaints when we went live if everybody had a voice in the project while we were still kind of testing it. But
what was the response from your trainees? Did the team have difficulties being trained, or on the contrary, did your super users have a well-defined way of training your team?
yeah,
I never heard back from them. I mean, was probably internal conversation that I was in private. So
yeah, no, I think throughout the project we did a pretty good job involving the users and keeping kind of everybody up to date with what we were doing, getting feedback from them. And so by the time we got to like the this summer, had a go live, it was it really went pretty smoothly. And I think our gas training was maybe a little bit better than the electric side. I think we were still dealing with some data issues on the electric side and some AU issues. So some of the workflows that we tried to walk through or didn't necessarily work, which causes frustration. But having our users in ArcGIS Pro, we encourage them to do it daily, but at least once a week. For the last year, kind of leading up to training, I think was really valuable as well. Just so much easier transition from ArcMap into ArcGIS Pro. But for the most part, we had pretty good feedback.
You must have had a lot of challenges, and I think we came up with a reduced list of the ones most significant. Could you please tell us about some of these?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the kind of the big overall challenges is that this is a 3-year project, and so a lot of things change in 3 years. The technology changes, we change our minds. It's we made a lot of decisions and then changed the way we decided early on going into it. But I think just being agile as you go through the project is really important. But one of our big challenges was our electric transmission and distribution. Those were separate back on the business unit slide. Even though we unified all of our groups, we still have an electric transmission department and an electric distribution department. So they are not unified. And in our prior GIS, we had completely different data models. They were in different data sets. So that was a challenge with the utility network. We had to make a decision on how we wanted to handle that. And that was one of the things that we kind of wavered on, went back and forth. SSP put together a presentation for us with, I think we had 5 different options as far as if we wanted to keep them separate, put them in common utility networks, but not, make them same data models, but not the same utility network. What we wanted to do as far as building out subnetworks and things like that. And so that was definitely a big challenge for us. In the end, we ended up combining it. Our transmission and distribution are together in the same utility network. So we now have a common data model for both, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. And then there was also difficulty managing all the subtypes, because you came with about 80 feature classes with different subtypes, and now you have to concentrate everything into 7 feature classes. What was a challenge there?
Yeah, I think, obviously consolidating stuff and just understanding, where things are going to go and how they function is a challenge. It's a big change. But I think, for the most part, on the electric side, we were able to keep things kind of familiar as far as, our subtypes from geometric network. translated pretty well over to our UN asset types.
Right. The next one is the one that I always found interesting. Now you have associations. What is that FK Global ID?
Well, I won't tell you what I really think, but we're talking about that feature key. Associations was probably one of the biggest challenges with the utility network migration that we, at least for us, it's been a challenge just kind of understanding the associations and how they work versus the relationships. You know, we talked about like the bank and the unit model that we use. You know, those used to all be relationships and now they're associations. And, you know, Esri has kind of taken that associations table and almost hidden it in your database. It's kind of difficult to get to. And not a lot of ways, you know, I mean, having our integrations have to hit that associations table when it's a very large table. It's definitely like up the time on our integrations and things like that. I would say it's been one of our biggest challenges for sure. And then even just for our users not having that related global ID that they're used to seeing on features has been probably one of the most difficult things to adapt, I think.
Yeah, you want to see in your service point or service location the global ID of the transformer that is feeding the service location without having to go tracing back and forth and all that stuff, right? Flipping, we have two flipping challenges here. Could you please tell us first the one for the CVAs or
contingent values.
Yeah.
So our contingent value flipping, this was something, and you know, more decisions that we made on the project and changed our minds back and forth a couple of times. So we really implemented contingent values more so on the electric side. But once we had done that, I don't remember which mock or pilot we were in, but we found that if there's an option on a domain dropdown that you can choose to show all values. So if you have your contingent domain set, you know, you have, you know, maybe a domain of 50 manufacturers and, you know, you can use that same domain across all your different equipment types, but then you limit it depending on which equipment type you pick. So if you pick a distribution transformer, you may only see 15 domain options, manufacturer options. But there is the checkbox where you can click to see all values. If you choose a domain value that's outside of the contingent value assigned to that asset type, it will actually change the asset type of your feature. Which.
So you mean you change a service transformer to a power transformer?
Right. Yeah. Just by picking the wrong manufacturer. So at that point, we were like, that made us super nervous, and we were like, okay, we're not going to use contingent values. And then in the end, we went back to contingent values. And we just really hammered it home with our users, like, don't click that checkbox to show all values.
A training process. What about the project team flipping?
One of the challenges we ran into with, you know, throughout our project, again, being a 3-year project, the entire SSP team, except for Joaquin, changed over the 3 years. You know, I think we had 3 project managers. We had 2 project engineers, or 3, I guess, 3 project engineers. And, you know, the leads for each gas and electric changed. So, I mean, obviously your project team changing in the middle of your project is a big challenge to work with or to deal with, but, you know, SSP did a really nice job, made it pretty seamless, didn't affect our timelines at all. You know, like I said, definitely it's just something we had to work through, but I think we handled it pretty well. And we were lucky enough that our MDU team didn't turn over at all in those 3 years.
What about the hard freeze that we wanted to impose after Mach 2? What happened?
I mean, it's just really hard. I mean, in theory, you kind of got to put a line in the sand and say, this is it, we can't make any more changes, or you're going to go live with something that you haven't like thoroughly tested. But we found that we just, as we continued with our testing in UAT, which was post Mach 2, so post hard freeze, we just found more things that needed to be changed. So we were lucky enough to, I guess, convince SSP to be agile with us and continue to make changes even after we had declared that hard freeze in place.
What about the challenge about user adoption and OCM strategies?
I think, obviously it's a big change going to ArcGIS Pro, but I think, just OCM was a big focus for us from the beginning of the project. SSP really hammered it home with us. They had an OCM team for us to work with. We actually had an OCM team within MDU for a different project that we were able to utilize to help us and work with the SSP team. And it just, communication was key, which I think is true with any project and really anything, but communicating early and often and was just really something we focused on. We had a communication plan that we worked really hard on. We met probably twice a week just to talk through the communication plan. But definitely something that was a big focus, and I think it was important in helping us make our project successful.
Mm-hmm. Preparing for this presentation, we also came with a not very exhaustive list of the lessons learned, but some of them that you think, particularly in this presentation, it would be beneficial for folks to listen to.
Yeah, so I mean, early exposure in education, like I said, we did kind of the Esri UN and ArcGIS Pro trainings before we even started with the data modeling side of our project. And then I think, making that decision to bring all of our whole GIS team in into the testing, I think was really important. Just really helped them kind of buy into the new technology and the new data model. And so I think the earlier you can get your team exposed, the better.
And the pilots and mocks was also helpful, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two kind of go together as far as, being able to see your own data in that new environment is really just invaluable, and it helped us make a lot of choices. Like I said, helped us maybe flip-flop on some of those back and forth, but just, being able to see that data in the pilots and mocks just helped us make the best decision we could for our go live.
What about the performance? What was the issue you found and the lessons from there?
So we, as far as server performance, that was something that was kind of hammered into us early on, was that we needed to focus on that and make sure we, the utility network is a beast. It's, it does not compare to what we had with, ArcFM and ArcMap, but so we really focused a lot on kind of our server build and how we were going to organize all of our data. And one thing that one of our kind of still dealing with, I guess, is our web maps are now hitting resources on the client side. And so we're completely maxing out GPUs or on the CPUs, excuse me, on our end users' computers with our web maps. And that's just, it's a big change, publishing out your utility network layers and how, the way you choose to do that. Whether you use subtype group layers or definition queries, obviously having lots of definition queries in your map doesn't perform very well and just really pulls a lot of resources, having that same layer in your map multiple times. So definitely, like I said, we put a lot of focus on the server side of things, didn't really consider the client side. So still working on kind of perfecting that side of it.
Right, the definition query and the performance hit because they are not directly supported by the UN, right? But that was somehow the price you have to pay for a more like-for-like implementation. But you said it's affecting the web maps severely, or, well, I don't want to be that dramatic, because you brought this up to Esri recently, and they are working on it, it seems like, to take care of this.
Yes, we are working with Esri to help us kind of optimize our web maps, and because we did, trying to have that like for like, rather than publishing our maps with subtype group layers, we basically made them look exactly the same way as they did with our geometric network data. So we have, the device layers probably published, I don't even know, 20 different times with a definition query on it. So that's, it's a lot of data in the map, and it definitely posed some challenges, but it was, like you said, it was kind of the price that you pay to keep that like for like feel.
And these attribute rules that somehow in the beginning seem like they are gonna replace your auto updaters, they also had an impact.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you don't really think about. Like, I mean, at least in theory, when we're kind of planning it, we're like, oh, the more attribute rules, the better. The more we can kind of automate and have it do, it's going to be great. Well, if you have a lot of attribute rules that need to fire every time you map a point, you might have 5 different attribute rules firing, and so its system's going to sit and spin there a little bit while those attribute rules are firing. Another thing we ran into with attribute rules was on our integrations. We call our CIS loaders when we bring our customer information into our NSO table, and we had done it on the gas side first, which we have over 1 million gas customers, and it took a little bit longer than it did in the GN, but it wasn't that bad. But when we got to the electric side, that NSO table has, I don't even know the number, but a lot of attribute rules firing because all of our unit records are on that NSO table as well. And so our CIS loader was taking, I want to say it was like 5 times as long as our gas loader, which we have 10 times as many gas customers as electric. So and right away we didn't even know why it was doing it. We were like, what the heck? Why is this integration taking so long? And it came back to all those attribute rules firing on that table every time we update a record. So
yeah, and then the branch versioning and the fact that you don't have like a reconcile and post automatic queued up process. What is the repercussion?
I think one of the biggest things is that, with the default version, there's no good way to really protect your default version because we are using out of the box ArcGIS Pro. Our users are reconciling and posting their own versions. And if you were to protect your default version, then our users weren't able to post their versions or post their edits to default. So we have to keep default public, which just kind of opens it up to risk that our editors will edit the default version. But
with a no undo button, yeah.
No
But okay, so let's try to finish on a lighter note here. Where do you find the project and the implementation now?
Yeah, so we went live with gas in September and electric in October. So we are production live all the way through. I think we've finally got our last integration on the electric side kind of wrapped up here right before Thanksgiving. So about a month post go live, but feeling pretty good about it. So yeah, I would say mission accomplished. We have successful utility network implementation on both commodities. We really focused on our one vision, one utility kind of motto, and our gas brands are all in one single utility network instance. We're using common workflows, templates, editing templates. Same with electric distribution and transmission, one UN instance there. Our workflows for gas and electric, we try to keep somewhat similar where we can. We have combo editors that do both gas and electric, so keeping that as similar as we can, I think was important. Yeah, we pretty much took our store displays that we had, created maps to use in ArcGIS Pro. So we have, our gas map, our gas editing map, our electric editing map. We've got our combo map. We've got our one-line maps, our outage maps, things like that. And then, yeah, we see preparing for common maximum OMS integrations, but we are there. We went live with OMS, I think, right before Thanksgiving as well, with our UN integration and got Maximal running as well. So we're there, mission accomplished.
I'm glad to hear that. So, well, thank you, Jessica, for all this information, and thank you everybody for listening to us today. Are there any questions, Keith?
Hey, Joaquin and Jessica. Okay, yes, a lot have come in, and in looking at them, some of these you may have stated during the presentation, but it can't hurt to touch on them again. Okay, let's start here. How were the team resources at MDU organized, and how many were there?
As far as, so for our GIS team, we have, there's 2 teams under me. I have a supervisor, I've got 2 supervisors, and then an editing team and an analyst team. I think on our editors team, we've got about 10 GIS editors, and our analyst team is 7 GIS analysts. So kind of rounds us out at 20 of us total. As far as our project team, we have, I think we had 12 kind of core members, but that included our 3 technical GIS guys. So really we tried to, from our GIS team, we took myself and then both of my supervisors, and then we selected, I think we just maybe have 1 analyst on the team and then 2 technicians to help us as well. So kind of tried to keep, spread it around, get people from each team to get some insight from all different sides.
Perfect. All right, next up, how important is it to understand and document your current state before heading into the migration project?
We talked about that a little bit, but I really can't stress it enough. I think it was so important for us, especially coming from kind of, having different workflows across the different brands, really documenting the way we did it so we could kind of take best practices from each of the brands and come up with the best way to go forward. I think, to really plan out and make decisions as best you can for your future state, you really got to understand that current state. And it sounds so simple, but it's really just really invaluable to understand what you have to best figure out where to go with it.
You really helped us a lot, Jessica, at the SSP level, particularly implementing the solutions, and because we were able to take many of those requirements and put them, because we wanted to have that structured way of agile development, and put it into DevOps as user stories with their tasks. So I think that we benefited a lot from the very detailed analysis of your current state and what you wanted in the future. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Joaquin. All right, next up, with the change from Map to Pro and having so many users, how did training go with this new interface? Was it in-house or contracted? Do you have a training team that facilitated this?
So SSP trained our trainers, and then our trainers were just our own team members. They were the 1 analyst and then the 2 technicians from our core team. So they were just our GIS team that we used to do the trainings. And we, like I said, we did do kind of the Esri trainings on just generic kind of utility network and ArcGIS Pro ahead of the project. But when we were training on our UN implementation, it was SSP trained our trainers, and then our trainers train the rest of the team. And I think, like I said too, it was, we started kind of early on. You know, my 2 supervisors were really good about, you know, working with their teams and picking topics. So we tried to have a new topic each week that we would meet on for an hour with the entire team. I think that really helped as well. But no like special trainers, I guess. Just really used our own team, which I think helps having people train that really understand the data.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, with the data cleanup, did you have a deadline for edits in production?
We had lots of deadlines for data cleanup. In the end, I mean, I think we ended up having, we froze our database on the gas side like beginning of August. I want to say August 10th, and went live on September 16th. So it was about a 6-week freeze where we did not make edits in production, aside from things that we had to map to stay within compliance or safety reasons. And then we're, you know, with that, we just tracked everything that we edited in production, knowing that we would have to redo those edits in the utility network once we got our final migrated data back. But yeah, as we kind of went through, like I said, with each pilot and mock, SSP would provide us a list of errors that showed up during the migration. And so we worked pretty hard to knock those out as best we could every time we got a new list. So try to make the list shorter with each iteration.
All right, thanks, Jessica. Next up, do you remember how many topological errors you received after your first migration run? And did it slow down the project, and how did you deal with it, if so?
Oof. I don't remember the number, but it was a lot. I mean, after the first migration, it maybe wasn't that bad because we had done the data assessment ahead of the project. But I wouldn't say it slowed down the project. We kind of planned for it. You know, we knew it was going to come. SSP prepared us very well for that. You know, so we had kind of a team of people. We did end up doing some staff aug. We hired a team of technicians to do our kind of daily as-builting work for us, while our in-house GIS team was able to kind of focus on the project and data cleanup and making sure what we needed for the utility network.
Jessica, if it helps, I have Andrew Zempel sitting here with me, and Andrew Zempel is a QC expert for the migrations that we did. He has the numbers. If Andrew, would you mind?
How many we have after that first migration?
Well, the initial migration for Mach 1 was 28,000 for the electric. Obviously, not all of those are due to source issues, but it's identifying what issues we need to come up with a solution for the migration to not present that error.
And how many in the very last migration for go live?
I think for electric, I have that to pull that up. $769.
769. Okay, well, from 24,000, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But then what was delivered was 0.
And then we delivered. Yeah, we cleaned everything up. Remember, Jessica? So we took care of those
20,000.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Okay. Next up, for the ArcGIS Pro with UN, did you have to upgrade end user laptops?
We tried that. So we did, but our editors are all working in EVM. So we use Horizon VMware. So they're working on that VDI environment when they're using ArcGIS Pro. And then a lot of our analysts work on the servers directly. So we did try upgrading some end user laptops. And it made a difference, but we still found that VDI environment's best for editing.
All right, next up, how are you bringing GIS data location of existing utilities into your Esri system if you do that?
From existing utilities, like others? I guess we don't really.
I didn't understand the question, Keith. Could you please repeat?
Well, I would say if the person who asked that is still on, rephrase it, please. Let's go to the next one. I want to ask if you had any issues with the number of records in the base tables in Brain's versioning with the number of edits increases, so does the records in the base tables, and this impacts performance.
We haven't had any performance impacts, I wouldn't say, from that base table growing exponentially yet. You know, we've only been live for a couple months, so you know, it's something we're definitely keeping an eye on. We did have some issues with some integrations hitting the base tables directly. They were finding multiple records per actual record because they were seeing all these different branches of that one record. So we did have to create some views for some of our integrations to hit to kind of work around that branch versioning, but no performance impacts yet.
Excellent. Were you using Conduit Manager? How are you using conduits in the UN?
I don't know. I don't think we were using Conduit Manager. That doesn't ring a bell.
No, you do not. You didn't, and you do not now. And the conduit that you have, even though it's implemented as edge structure, edge features, and they have containment to the lines, etc., but there is no management, no metadata information that allows you to do, you know, all the stuff that a network underground management would do.
All right,
But you don't need it. I mean, so far you haven't had a need for the last several years, and you don't need it yet. Oh, but your data model is prepared for network underground management for the future. That's what we decided.
Maybe we're out of time. Let's try to get a couple more in here. Was web map best practices included in training?
I would say not really. We're still working on web map best practices, so work in progress.
Awesome.
We did train all of our users on the new web maps, but it was more just this is what we had, this is what we have now. So,
Joaquin, if you can go to the next slide before we run out of time. I have one more question, but the next slide should have a little guide for this. If you're looking for a great guide to get things started, please feel free to scan that QR code. Next question, is the like-for-like experience entirely on the client side?
yes. I mean, we tried as best we could to keep it all there. Obviously, things are very different on the back end for the team that's building everything and putting it all together. But you know, for most of the operations groups that are using the data, the look and feel is very familiar and similar to what we had before.
Right. Does your electric engineering group use PLS CAD?
No.
No. And last one, did the freeze cause delays in construction or any customer facing issues?
No, like I said, we did have to map a few things just to keep up with compliance. You know, we have a 180-day compliance rule on the gas side of things. And then we kind of just hold ourselves to that standard on the electric side as well. And if, you know, if we had any big primaries or anything that we would just map, like I said, for safety reasons. But we really didn't run into too much that we had to get mapped during those freezes, and we tried to minimize the freezes as best we could. You know, I think they were originally planned to be like 3 month freezes, but we were able to get that down to 6 weeks, which helped a ton. And you know, we really focused on kind of training it during that time, so we had plenty to do while our data was frozen.
I'm sure. Okay, yeah, there's a ton more questions, but we are out of time. PJ, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Jessica and Joaquin. Fantastic presentation. For our audience, we hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. As you log off, please take a moment and complete our survey and give us your feedback so we can continue to provide you with quality content. Thank you for attending. This concludes today's presentation.